He's telling the Rothschilds, you got to help me. Well, guess what? This is the secret plan of the Rothschilds and the royal family. You can't get a do-over in the middle of a world war that you created. So guess what happens? The Rothschilds and the royal family basically used the Jews as a human shield. That's the real story. And when this guy, Dylan Cooper, does his homework, I am very confident in telling both of you that this story, you will see that Jack comes out as accurate. I know this is going to be unpalatable for people to hear now, but remember what I told you about history. The only way we get on the right side of things and get to the truth is we have to know what the real truth is. And I think this is why when this story comes out, Safedine is going to lose a lot of the venom in his heart because he doesn't think that there's people really on his side. Me going and finding the Gaza genocide right now or doing things on Twitter, that's not going to help. What I just told you right now, that's really going to help. In other words, people are going to realize who the real bad guys really were. Safedine has tried to use his whole life to use the Bitcoin story to tell this story. But I got news for you. There's a better story. And that's a story that hasn't been told yet. But guess what? I know it. I know it to be true because I've done the due diligence. And now we have an academic historian who's publicly come out on a podcast in front of Tucker Carlson and said, this is my next project. And I know it's not going to be popular. And I know it's going to challenge convention. But Robert, this is how we change the world.
What is that project?
I don't know what he's going to call it.
Oh.
But he just called it his next project is to go into all the story between
okay.
the royal family, Rothschild, Hitler, and expose it.
Let me ask you this. So the Atlas you were describing, what is the justification for censoring that, even if it's created out? I heard about this from my wife, actually, because she studied biomedical science, but
I'll tell you what it is. It's like
the
decentralized side, there's no good defense of it. But remember, this is where the story that Danny didn't want to go down, the Mossad story, the Israel story, the Zionist story, these people, the B'nai B'rith, those are the people I told you about pre-Civil War. These people want to keep those people as clean as they possibly can through history.
you need to find these people, those people.
Yeah, those are the guys that came over from Saxe, Coburg, and Goethe. They're the ones that started B'nai B'rith in the United States.
And B'nai B'rith is?
B'nai B'rith is the forerunner. That's what the name was for the Anti-Defamation League.
Good.
And what's become AIPAC, which is what JFK wanted to ban. It's the foreign lobby of Israel.
Okay.
And the sacred cow, right?
Correct. It's right now. It's right now.
Get untouchable at every aspect.
It has to be untouchable for the Zionists. And this is where, I think a lot of people are, I know Danny was very uncomfortable with this. Jews and Zionists aren't the same.
Of course.
There's a couple of guys on Bitcoin Clubhouse. Every time I say this, it makes their skin turn. Why?
Right.
But I have to tell you, I grew up in New York City, so I know a lot of Jews who actually feel the way I do.
Sure.
I don't think you probably know the story because you probably haven't listened to all the podcasts that I've done, but how did I learn all this stuff about B'nai B'rith? You know who taught me about fractional reserve banking? Theodore Silbert. He was the CEO of Sterling National Bank on 57th and Madison Avenue. I worked for him for 2 years when I was 15 to 16 years old.
Okay.
And he was a card-carrying member of B'nai B'rith. When this was going on, this is when Trump took over Waldenberg Park and built the park. You could actually see the new skate rink being built from Mr. Silvert's penthouse. And I would go and dig their Rolls Royce out of the snow when I had snow days. And his wife would see me down there and she said, look, let's bring him up. Because my dad was a doorman of their building on Fifth Avenue. And I went up to their place and they were very nice to me and we built a relationship. And that's when Mr. Silbert said, he goes, well, your dad tells me that you're a really good athlete and you're really smart. So he started to give me, how shall we say, history lessons about things that I didn't know about. And one of the questions, he said, well, you're allowed to ask me any question. He said, what do you really want to know? And I said, Mr. Silbert, tell me why my family's poor and why your family's not. I said, your wife told me that you're getting ready to give your grandson, who's 13 years old, he's making his bat mitzvah, you're getting ready to give him $1 million. I said, how can I do that someday for my son? And guess what he did? He sat me down and he told me the story about how B'nai B'rith came over to the United States, started telling me how he got into banking. He said, Jack, he goes, there's an axiom with my people. He goes, if you control the money, you control everything. And he goes, the crazy part is you don't even have to control that much money. He goes, my bank is a very small bank in Manhattan. He goes, but the people who bank at my bank are very important. He goes, there's other bigger banks, other different people. He goes, but from my little bank, you're in my penthouse. That's three levels. He goes, so don't let anybody tell you that it's not possible. So this was a poor young kid growing up in New York to get the story from the old dog of actually how it works. And he's the one that taught me how fractional reserve banking really worked. And the coolest part of that story is when I was sitting at his house, he told me, he goes, I want you to come to my office on Monday when you're done with school. And he goes, we're going to have a talk. And this is the day he decided to hire me. So I don't have like any nice clothes at this time. So I'm wearing actually my dad's, one of his old suits and my dad's penny loafers. And I'm sitting there like I'm sitting with you right now. And he sees on the bottom of the penny loafers that the leather has got a hole in it. And he sees the suit that doesn't fit me. And he goes, Jack, I like you. He goes, the first order of business, he goes, go see this guy at Rockefeller Center across the street. He goes, give him my card. He goes, and then come back when you're done. I go down there to Barney's and I get put in Armani suit and shoes. And the tailor sends me back. And the first lesson he gives me, he goes, if you're going to work for me, you have to look the part. He goes, you're going to get ready to walk into Chase Manhattan Bank. You're going to walk into American Express. He goes, I can't have you looking the way you're looking. He goes, the facade is a big part of what we do. And let me just tell you something. I can tell you, as I'm telling you the story, I'm thinking about that day as it unfolded. What I said to the tailor, and the tailor said to me, he goes, do you know who you're dealing with? And I said, no. I said, he's one of the most powerful guys in all of Manhattan. And that is the guy that taught me about what is money. How does money really operate in a real world? How does it operate on Manhattan Island? I even found a lot of the information.
You got to unpack that one for me. That is the namesake of the show. So what if you had to define money and unpack the lesson that this man conveyed to you, how would you do that?
Money is relative power. And relative power is controlled by the environment you're in. It turns out, for Mr. Silbert, the island of Manhattan gave him great power. In other words, the magnetism on that island was huge. He had personal impacts on all the real estate dealings, the Kushner family, the Trump family. This is before Trump was who Trump became.
Right.
Silbert was part of elevating his game. And he told me, he goes, money allows you to control people. And he goes, they don't even know they're being controlled. And he goes, you don't even need that much money to control them, because those that don't have think that when you give them some bit of money, and he said to me, he goes, think about how you feel right now with $1,000 suit on and $500 shoes. He said, are you empowered? He goes, when you go home and show your father that. He said to me, he goes, I've never given your father a tip like I gave you today. He goes, I may have put $100 or $200 in an envelope for him at Christmas. He goes, but you showed me something by digging the snow out of my car. He goes, my own grandson who got $1 million wouldn't even do what you did.
Okay.
And I gave him $1 million. He goes, but all I had to do is give you a chance. He goes, and now I'm going to teach you how to become rich. He said, if that's what you want, he goes, I'll show you. truly how it works. And I remember walking around the city with bearer bonds, millions of dollars in an envelope, and him telling me, because money begins with you have to trust who you're in business with. And this is a time where no subways, bicycles, or we walked to where we went. Very, very interesting times. You know, in the 70s and 80s in New York City.
Can you, we started out down this path with the difference between Zionism and Judaism. What is that difference? I know, so I don't know a lot about this.
Judaism is the religion.
There's somewhere in here an ideology that views one group of people as human and other groups of humans as not human, basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize that.
That's in the Talmud, I think. Yeah, and that seems to me to be fundamental pathological human cognitive software.
But that's actually what is in their founding documents. That would be like the Talmud is kind of like Judaism's founding documents. But just like the founding documents today are not followed to the layer of the law,
Right.
the Jews that are what I would call secular Jews that go where the yarmulke is, you know, and follow even the very religious sects, they're not Zionists. They're separate. The Zionists are the people who wanted to make the prophecy in the Talmud happen in Israel.
Okay, so to try to simplify, there's a group of Jewish people who don't think they are superior to other humans.
Correct.
There's a group
And that makes up the, I would tell you, I think that makes up,
Zionists.
right. I think it makes up the largest amount of Jews.
Yeah.
The problem is the Jews that have most of the power in Europe and in the United States, they are Zionists.
Okay, and Zionists fundamentally believe they are
Israel-
superior to other humans.
Right. And not only that,
They are superior in what way? This is
in every way.
genetically,
No, I would tell you this is the craziest part of the story. The things that you heard about Hitler and the Aryan race, that's actually what the Zionists believe about themselves.
it's projection.
Okay. So, and that's the reason why Dylan Cooper, Martyr Made, the guy from Twitter, this is going to be really cool because this podcast, you are jumping the shark on this because you're hearing this from me, and I'm not an academician, but I can tell you, I'm a brain surgeon. I'm a very good diagnostician. What makes me a good diagnostician? I do due diligence like no one else you've ever met. I actually look under every stone. And I've never, prior to 18 months ago, ever talked publicly or even privately with my own family. If you actually interviewed some of my family, why? Because I did not think that this would ever come
Right.
to medicine, and it did. COVID is what brought all this to the surface. For example, Saftein's Gaza genocide is my COVID. That's how I want you to think about my mindset.
Well, they're both the same thing.
They are,
Both just
but they are. But here's the interesting part.
same end.
Well, it's also the same players. That's the interesting part. It's the industrial military complex and the politicians. But what are they fundamentally doing? And what did we just do? We just elected a guy who, how shall we say, has a lot of ties to these Zionists. In fact, he doesn't become who he is without these Zionists. I mean, his best friend, just so you know.
Talking about Trump.
Yeah, I'm talking about the
you
family of Estee Lauder.
But you have... Okay, continue, but I thought you were sort of pro-Trump, but now maybe...
No, I was never pro-Trump.
Okay.
I was-
you said, that's right. You said
I
not
was a
till
Bobby Kennedy guy.
Right.
Bobby
Got it.
and Nicole are the
Right.
ones that said, look, now, do I like Trump as a New Yorker? Yes, I thought Trump was great for New York.
Yeah.
Because where Trump came on the scene in New York, his New York was a train wreck under John Lindsay. It was bankrupt.
Are you concerned that he's another controlled opposition like ever was?
Yeah, I think he's a useful idiot. I've said that on other podcasts, and I have no problem saying that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you some of the people that I talk to in high government positions, they don't want me to say what I tell you, but if you know me, Uncle Jack's mouth's not a bakery. I'm going to tell you what I really think. And it doesn't mean, like, I could think, or you could think bad things about me. There may be things about me, say, Jack, I don't like this about you. There may be things about Robert Breedlove and his history that I don't like, But that doesn't mean that we can't find some common ground. You know that whole story about throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Like, I will tell you, there's things about Trump that I actually really like. But the thing I don't like is that he's been propped up to power by the people that have done some of the worst things in the world.
That rhymes with the entire Hitler narrative you just shared.
Well, not only that, but the COVID narrative.
Yeah.
It's actually tied to the polio vaccine. It's
Right.
tied to, we don't have a problem using humans and Americans as human shields. Why? Because it turns out the people that are populating Israel, the people that are the Zionists, they're better than us somehow. That's where Safety and I, we align. But you have to realize something. I think the way that we fight that power is a little bit different.
So, okay, if that cognitive pathology, because again, when I say that, I mean specifically that all humans are the same species, right? Biologically.
Well,
if you have an ideology
unless you
says,
took the jab, now you're a GMO human.
okay, well, before we get on that path, pre-jab, we're all actually one species. If you adopt an ideology that says, no, we are superhuman, you are subhuman, then your ideology does not map onto biological reality. That's what I would call pathological, basically.
I think
wrong.
I think it's what you and Luke talked about. It's sociopathy.
Okay. Sociopathy.
They're sociopaths.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you have to
yeah,
realize sociopaths tend to be very successful.
So-
they tend to go very high in the corporate world,
Okay.
and they become invisible.
Okay.
And that's how they run their Wizard of Oz behind the screen.
What can we do about that? If it's rooted in, it sounds like it's
Show
rooted-
me your
rooted in
right
the
arm again.
Talmud. Bitcoin. I know.
There you
We're
go,
talking
bro.
A lot about
That's-
Bitcoin.
That's the answer.
So,
That is
okay.
the answer. And guess what? That's
does-
why I'm trying to
does
tell you
that-
that the same key, listen to me, the same key opens the door to heaven and hell. Like, we know the bad things. I'm opening the can of worms for you about Trump. That's the bad things. Remember, he's the dude with Bobby that's like, let's make Bitcoin a reserve asset. Now, why are we happy about that? Well, we have Bitcoin. They're going to pump our bags. We know that it's going to lead to freedom. What's the bad thing? If you're a true Bitcoiner, cypherpunk style, like Len Sassman, Peter Todd, David Shum, no, they don't want this. This idea that's percolating right now is Michael Saylor's creation that we want.
Well, you
we
mean,
want-
you mean nation state adoption?
Well, yeah, no, that we want the government somehow involved in it. I would tell you, to be honest with you,
inevitable though? How could you ever defeat the government from getting involved?
I think they're going to get into it, but
anything
I
of
think
value the government inserts itself into it.
But I think Bitcoin can remain the power base of the people, the alloidial title of man. I don't think it can be corrupted.
I agree with that.
They're trying all they can. Lutnick, Fink,
Right.
all the guys that are around Trump that are jockeying for position. I'm even going to tell you, Saylor, the guy that I know that you like, you've done a podcast with. I've said to one of you guys before, there's no sacred cows with me, brother. I had dinner with the guy. You know, Chatham rules, so I can't tell you what went on. But there was two Bitcoiners in the room, had a huge discussion with Mr. Saylor.
I could look. I've talked.
And we're not,
private-
I'm just going to tell you.
I can imagine that the sparks were flying. Is all I got to say, because I know how he feels about talking about some of these things
Correct.
publicly, and I know how you feel about talking about some of these things publicly.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you. We can still be in the same
And for what
family,
it's
but we
worth-
can fight with each
yeah,
other.
and for what it's worth, I actually lean a little more your direction, because I mean I think he's playing a different game. He is, right? He's a different level, different game.
He's
different
like Theodore
targets.
Hilbert.
Yeah, exactly.
He's way above our pay grade.
No, that's fine. You play that game, he's playing it fucking brilliantly. However, that doesn't mean there's not other games to be played. Like,
Well, you know, one of my friends that kept me on Twitter, Jack Dorsey.
yeah.
He's got way
Right.
more Bitcoin than fucking Saylor,
Yeah.
and he's playing a totally different game. So what am I trying to tell you? I've surrounded myself with people that have different ideology. What I'm telling you, the ideology isn't a big issue.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you that I want to sit down with my enemies at the table. I want to understand your argument, and then I want to parse it, do my due diligence, and I'm going to take away from you the things I need to take away.
Right.
But then via negativa on the things that I find superfluous.
Okay. Let me ask you then. So you said Bitcoin was a solution to a pathological ideology. Let's assume Bitcoin fully monetized, fully at its pinnacle of success in the world, and these ideologies still persisted. you're saying that they just wouldn't be able to wreak as much damage, even though, because it would still, like, this would still introduce some, at least unethical behavior, right? If you assume that if I either my heart of hearts that I'm a superhuman and you're a subhuman, well, I mean, I eat cows, right? They're not human. I eat them. So doesn't that implicitly justify some pretty atrocious acts from me against you in that world, even if Bitcoin is monetized?
The way you framed that discussion, I'm going to agree with you. But the way I want you to think about it, or not you to think about it, but the way I want you to understand Uncle Jack, I want you to think about what happened 65 million years ago in the Yucatan Peninsula, where small little rodents took over the world from T-Rexes. It's more like that. That gradually, over time, that the T-Rexes are now flying around in the trees around us right now. And are they doing the same thing to the mammals that they were doing then? The answer is no. And remember what I said to you before in your Sailor series, you guys did a really good job of parsing out the case that the thermodynamic energy really is the fiat money to fuel the industrial military complex. What is Safedean's real problem? What is your problem? What is my problem with the Zionists? It's actually the war machine. And I think, Jason Lowry's done a good job in his book. I think you've done a good job in many of the podcasts you are. So I guess how I'm answering your question is that in due time, it will be taken out. I think the problem is that Safedine wants it solved tomorrow.
So you think incentives then reshape ideologies over time?
No question. Okay. I mean, just think about how we got all the gay people that we got in the world today. Without screen technology, it never happens.
Right.
Like if we stayed, with black and white TV, I don't think we get the freak show that we get in many of the cities we have.
All right, so you're starting to get into the light story a little bit, which I do want to get into.
Just